Hello all and welcome to this bonus episode on the PodSyndicate feed. Now, followers of the show will know already that we are big fans of the Star Trek franchise and that we are very happy with CBS All Access's second foray into the franchise with Star Trek Picard. Not only did we have the return of a beloved character at a time when I think we can all agree the world really needed him, we were also introduced to numerous new characters who are already cementing themselves as iconic in their own right. Now, a real breakout character is that of the childlike but deadly Romulan Elnor, brought to life by the talented Australian actor Evan Evagora, who I'm happy to welcome to the show. So thanks so much for your time, Evan.
Thanks for having me. How are you? You good?
I'm good. We were just talking a little bit off record that it's very rare that we actually have anybody on the show who we're not Skyping from LA. So it's really nice to be in somewhat of a similar time zone. So you were saying you're there in Australia with the family, sort of enjoying being emancipated from the lockdown.
Yeah, to begin with, it was, like a bit harsh, a bit unusual, something I hadn't experienced before. But I've kind of began to view the lockdown that we were in as kind of a blessing. I mean, otherwise I would have been, like you said, over in LA, probably, filming season 2. So this is just pretty much an opportunity to spend as much time as possible with friends and family while I can. So it's been a blessing in disguise, I'd say.
And was it? I'm wondering. I don't want to jump over the place too much, but I mean, I'm just thinking the timing of the lockdown. I mean, was it deflating for you? And obviously, you've had this initial sort of like flourish of success on the back of Picard. Do you feel that has it impacted your being able to enjoy it? I mean, obviously, accessibility to things like conventions and premieres and getting out there. How's that felt?
I mean, in terms of meeting the fans, it has been a bit different. We tried a whole virtual meet and greet. So it was interesting to be able to meet fans, even though it was face-to-face, it was across the screen. So it is a little bit different. I did experience my first con right before the lockdown. So I was able to meet the fans, kind of gauge their opinion of the show and their thoughts on the characters and everything, because the fans really are the whole reason why we do the show. If there were no fans, there would be no Star Trek Picard, there'd be no Star Trek at all. And it's, great that we've got such a loyal fan base. But with the lockdown, I'd say it's actually given me a better perspective of things, because after season 1 premiered, we were about to jump right into season 2 filming for Star Trek. And I don't think I would have had any time to really, sit back and evaluate the kind of whirlwind time that my life has been in the past 2 years filming this show. So it's like I said again, it is really a blessing in disguise, and it's given me more time to actually look back on the work that I've done in the show, and just gauge everyone's opinion on it as well as my own. So I think it's actually been very helpful and beneficial.
And I suppose also I've spoke to people from different eras of the Star Trek franchise, and one of the things that they often talk about is that really it's 2 jobs. You've got the work, you've got the performing, and then you've got all of the other things that go with that. And I'm just wondering, from a sort of cast bonding perspective, obviously there was this period after the filming where you were going out and you were doing these promotional activities. Was that sort of part of the bonding experience, or were you guys already really tight by the time that you'd done it? How, from a relationships perspective, how was that period after filming when you were actually able to go out and talk and presumably spend time together doing that?
I think you hit the nail on the head. We were able to come together more as a group. The more we hung out outside of work. Comic-Con really helped cement kind of our relationship with each other, and such a great dynamic. The Motley Crew, it's what we still call ourselves. I'd say the first time we all hung out, all of us together as a group, because Issa and Harry were obviously filming away from us. The shooting schedules were a bit different, and obviously we don't meet their Elnor doesn't meet their characters until later in the show. But I'd say San Diego Comic-Con was the first time we all really got to hang out together and bond together as a group, and it's just kind of moved from strength to strength from there. We've got a really, really good group of people, and I think I'm really lucky to have landed a job with such wonderful people, and given that it's only the second role I've ever done, and it's the first big role I've ever done in television or in movies.
Well, I mean, you mentioned that obviously you're a formative stage in your career, and I was just wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about your path to acting. I mean, I understand that you grew up with a very keen interest and abilities in sport. Was that a career path for you at one point? Was that something that a road you were thinking of taking?
It was either that or I think a PE teacher at one point. I was trying to think of a way to do the most work with the most days off, and I was like, like a primary school teacher would be pretty easy. But like sport was and always will be such a big part of my life. I'm a big advocate for physical activity, like no matter what it is, even if it's just like morning stretches, 15 minutes a day. I think it's a good way to help set your mind. And when I do it in the morning, it helps, clear a path of exactly what I've got to do, and it helps me tackle, all the tasks that I've set out for the day. But yeah, it was for a period of time, it's something that we were talking about. But as soon as high school ended, I kind of went on a little bit of this self-discovery trip to Europe. I just wanted to experience the world and, see how other people like live their lives. And after that trip, I was kind of left thinking, what was it that I really wanted to do? And film and TV throughout my life has been something that, has played such a large pivotal role. I was the kid who, when DVDs first came out, would go to the behind the scenes and watch all of the extras and all of the commentary and, every single aspect of it, not just the acting, but, listening to how the props are made from Harry Potter and finding out that the food that they serve in the Great Hall isn't actually food. Stuff like that would just blow my mind. There's like a kind of magic to film and television, I think, that really attracted me to it and made me realize that was my calling.
Were there any particular films or performances or actors or franchises that you mentioned Harry Potter, that were formative in that? Was there anything that kind of lit the spark for you?
I'd have to say this is such a broad thing, but literally everything and anything fantasy attracts me to it. I mean, I was trying to think the other day, like, out of Star Trek and Star Wars, which one, was the most influential? And I just sat there.
Be very careful how you answer this question.
Yes, I do have to be very careful. But they both had such an impact on me. It's hard to split the two. And it's the same with things like Lord of the Rings. I was fortunate enough to meet Sir Ian McKellen at the start of the year, and I was just absolutely starstruck when I met him. And luckily, I played it cool. I didn't want to bombard him with a bunch of, like facts or, kind of like geek out with him. I wanted to, kind of act a bit like suave, act a bit cool. So he was like a real lovely person. But yeah, and everything fantasy and sci-fi, I really loved the old Batman movies growing up, the Tim Burton ones, and then is it Joel Schumacher, the one with I've forgotten his name now. Not the Clooney Batman, the previous one.
Michael Keaton or Val Kilmer?
Keaton and Val Kilmer. Those are my two favorite ones. Although I do have to give credit to Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, because those are some really good cheesy one-liners that are.
Oh yeah, he's at 11 right there.
Yeah,
isn't he?
exactly.
He'd have been a great Shatner era Star Trek villain. He takes the brakes off, Arnie does. And you mentioned Lord of the Rings as well. I mean, gosh, you want to talk behind the scenes bonus features on DVDs? That's the kind of the holy book of that in many ways.
And I only watch the extendeds now with Lord of the Rings. I feel like it's the only thing that gives it justice. I can't watch the theatrical shortened versions. I'm like, I need more. Yeah,
it does. You get that kind of missing limb syndrome when you watch those shorter ones. I mean, you mentioned as well a little bit about sort of the importance of exercise and how good that is for the spirit and the soul. I'm just wondering, did that help you? Did the physicality of what you've done in the past help you with the character of Elnor at all?
Well, when it came to stunts, I was able to volunteer myself and offer my services a bit more. Obviously, I'm not, by any means a professional stuntman, fighter, or anything like that, but they were able to train me a bit easier, and I was able to do a lot more things, and I was willing to do a lot more things. There were a few stunts that didn't end up quite making the cut. Like I came into rehearsals one day and just so you know, it's in a big like 2-story warehouse kind of. That's the studio. That's where the spaceship La Serena really is. And they had a crane, like a crane lift at the top, and they said you're going to be jumping down from that on a bunch of ropes for the day. That's what we're going to practice. We're trying to put this stunt into the show. Would you be willing to do it? And the first thing I said was, hell yeah, let's do it. I can do this in my sleep. So they put a harness on me. They attach these ropes. I hop onto the crane. Before we go up, they go, do you want to practice jumping from halfway down first? And I go, nah, I've got this, no problem. So we get to the top, and immediately I start breaking into a sweat, looking down. I'm like, you know what, can we just like lower it? Can we go back down halfway? I think you guys were right. Well, I'm not ready for this. But, you know, they were very supportive, you know, with all of my stunts, the stunt team and everyone, and the director and everything. So yeah, it was the physicality, I would say, yeah, it really did help.
You know, having that sort of trust in the stunt people to take that weight when you take the leap. I mean, that's something.
It is. And a credit to my stunt double Anise, who's also the Romulan assassin who kills Daj.
Oh wow, okay. Oh, is he the one who gets vaporized at the
Yeah, so he's the one who spits on her. And you know, yeah, all that stuff happens, and then Picard, yeah, like the explosion happens, Picard's running. So that was actually him, and he does everything that I wouldn't do. He pretty much makes Elnor look cool. Every wall run that you see, every really cool like double backflip or anything like that, I wish I could take credit for it, but it's all Anise. He's a legend.
And it just makes you realize, I suppose, in this age of high definition and 4K, how seamless that is. Because, I mean, Star Trek has got a fine tradition of incredibly obvious stunt performers. So, for example, even going back to the 60s show, anytime Captain Kirk would do something heroic, he'd suddenly transform into a middle-aged, sort of out of shape kind of. But that's really come along. But I was just wondering as well. I mean, am I correct in thinking that you're a fan of Star Trek? That you were a fan before you got the role? I'm just curious as to sort of what your history with the franchise was before.
So I was a fan of it growing up. My mum is big into all things sci-fi, so she was kind of the one that I guess nurtured that. I will admit though, growing up initially, like whenever we were little and Star Trek would be playing, our mum would come into the room and be like, guess what's on? And you know, being a little kid, the things I'd want to watch would be like Ninja Turtles or, you know, The Simpsons or something like that. And she'd be like, Star Trek's on, like, let's all go watch. And I remember like eye rolling, you know, at the thought of going and watching Star Trek. But the more I grew up watching it, and the more episodes I watched, and the more mum, you know, would put on The Search for Spock. And I mean, even the reboots coming out were, you know, kind of helped like reignite my love for everything Star Trek. So it was very influential. I'd have to say my favorite episode at the moment, I've been like before it was Measure of a Man, only because I really enjoy that episode. But I'd have to say Iborg now. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Jonathan Del Arco.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah, I can't. Every time someone asks me what my favorite episode is now, that is probably without a doubt the number one on my list.
It makes me think, actually, because I mean, you obviously would have been privy to all of the speculation that was happening when the first trailers were coming out for Picard and everything. And I think that the fact that Jonathan Del Arco was there was kind of a message almost that the producers were sending to the fans of, hey, you know, this is a somewhat obscure character that we're going to be bringing back. We haven't forgotten, we know. And I think that very much validated the show even before it had aired. So fans, what did you make of the speculation? Was it interesting to be in a position of kind of being in on the secret and seeing everybody else scrambling to figure out what it all meant and piecing all of the images together and all of that fun stuff?
Yeah, some of the theories were very, very out there. You know, like a lot of them touched really close onto what it was, and others just were nowhere near. So it was kind of interesting just to see where people's heads were at and what the fans were, you know, kind of like hoping and expecting from this Star Trek. And I think we did, like, I can say this as a fan. I mean, it delivered for me, but I also got to kind of live out like a dream of mine, and that's, you know, standing next to Jean-Luc Picard and you know, standing next to my captain in the world, not as a person coming on set and visiting, but as an actual character in the show.
Yeah, and I mean, gosh, what an introduction! What a great sort of mentorship that must have been as well. So I mean, how could you just take us through the process of you getting the role? How that occurred, how you found out?
Oh, how I found out. So I was originally, what happened was I was shooting, I landed a role in a Blumhouse movie known as Fantasy Island.
Mm.
Small little role, but very integral to the story. I I was shooting in two kind of I'd say periods. I had about a 3 week break, and where I flew back to Australia, and during that time I auditioned for Star Trek. Star Trek came across my audition schedule, I guess if you want to call it, for lack of a better word. And I remember going into the room, meeting the casting director, nervous as hell, so nervous. We did one take of a scene, and I absolutely butchered it. I thought I did a terrible job. He kind of eased me up. I was a bit more relaxed heading into the second take, and then we smashed out the two scenes. I said, every word verbatim. It went it went as well as I wanted it to go. So I left there feeling happy, saying, if I got it, I've got it. I did my best. And then I ended up flying to Fiji the next day to resume filming for Fantasy Island. And I remember the whole flight, just the longer, the longer how am I trying to say this? I'm getting tongue tied. The more time that went by, the worse I thought I did in the
You sort
audition.
of mythologized in your mind what actually happened, perhaps a little.
Yeah, I was psyching myself out a lot, and then I get a phone call when I land in Fiji saying you're actually being considered for the role. You've been shortlisted. You and I think it was 10 other people. They'd like to have a Skype call with you and give you some notes, and they'd like you to retape. 2 days go by, haven't heard anything from them, and then I get another phone call. The list has been dropped more. You're being considered one of five. A day goes by. You're now one of three. The phone call with the director, Hanali Culpepper, the brilliant lady, I should say, who directed the first two episodes of Picard.
She's done
She
some
gave me,
amazing work on Discovery as well. Great,
yeah,
great
she
director.
has. I haven't watched the latest season yet. I'm getting through Lower Decks at the moment,
Oh,
um,
brilliant, brilliant.
which I'm
What a dark
absolutely
horse
loving.
that show turned out to be.
Oh, I just had a feeling as well. I'm like, this is something special with Lower Decks. I'm like, this is gonna it reminds me a lot of like Final Space and things like
Yeah.
that, but it's got such like a better take, and the humor's there, and just the throwbacks and the just the throwbacks and the homage they pay to all the other shows.
Mm.
And wait, I'm not sure if I'm giving any spoilers, but there's in the last episode, there's two people who make an amazing cameo.
Yeah.
I don't I don't want to give too much away in case
I
there are
think
people.
you'll be fine on this channel. I think we can be quite confident that all of our viewers will be up to date with.
I can't believe they got Riker and Marina onto the show. It was
Yeah.
my sister rang me and she's like, you're in for a surprise.
Well, I
And
mean, we've
she
had we've had we've had obviously Frakes has been directing the shows of
Yeah,
the live action shows, and he's of course appeared in Picard. It's almost as though he has to ordain each of the series now. He's almost replaced William Shatner now as the person that you need if you want to represent Star Trek with a person. Frakes is a good person to do that, and Marina as well. I mean, some of the work that Marina did in Picard was heartbreaking.
yeah. I wish when Issa texted us, they were all because they all were on the set that day. Michael Dorn. I was so jealous. I was like, you need to get pictures. You need to get pictures of all the group together, all of them chatting. And the photos that she sent through, it looked like a reunion of just old friends.
Yeah, or
Just
the
just
world's
that same
most
excitement.
exclusive convention,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Fire Fest that went well of conventions in in
A
many
Fire
ways.
Fest that was shooting at a Paramount like lot. I think it was like lot 16, the most
Wow.
exclusive thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry, I derailed you. You were telling me about how the numbers were getting whittled down, and there was this process.
Yes, so the numbers were getting whittled down. I spoke to Hanali over the phone. She gave me her notes. The night before we were filming an underwater scene in Fantasy Island, I had caught like a really bad chest infection of some sort. So my throat and my nose were really clogged. So I was, sniffing the nose clearer. I think it was a bath towel as my background in my hotel room, and we were shooting on my really old MacBook, and everything just looked pixelated, but it was the best we could do. So I taped that, sent it through, and then 3 days go by, don't hear anything, and then I finish filming my scenes, and I get back to my hotel room at 6 in the morning. The sun's rising. I'm dead. I'm half asleep, and I get a phone call from my manager saying, "You've got Star Trek." And at this point, I'm so tired. I'm just like, "Yep, okay, that's great news. Cool. Good night. Bye."
Wow, they must have been like, wow, he's a cool customer, this
Like,
cat.
yeah, they'd be like, he gives nothing away. But then I woke up the next morning being like, "Did that happen? Was that a dream?" So I had to kind of call and just to confirm. I'm like, "So I got that role, yeah." And then we spoke some more. "Yeah, you got the role. You'll be going to LA in a couple months' time. We're just prepping the visa and everything." And then I kind of just went nuts and like lost my mind. I called home. I called my mom. And I couldn't tell anyone what I was auditioning for as well. So because I knew like my family would love it. Like this is kind of like a dream. If one of us is in the show, it's
And talk about a validating thing for families as well. I mean, everybody knows what Star Trek is. I mean, that's not something that you need to explain or contextualize to somebody. That's big.
Yeah, it was kind of the same with Fantasy Island too, but because it was a dark reboot of the old
Yeah,
TV
yeah.
show.
That Blumhouse Fantasy Island film that is an interesting film. That's a novel way to approach a reboot of a beloved television franchise.
Yeah, it was very interesting because I remember when I first auditioned for that, I was thinking, oh, like Jumanji, like this would
Yeah,
just be And then I started reading, I'm like, oh, it's actually like a lot darker than
yeah, yeah.
Jumanji. It was an
It's an
interesting
effective
take.
film.
Yeah, and
And
Khan as well, Ricardo Montalban. So I feel like I've just jumped from one thing that he was in into another thing that he was in.
wow, yeah. Hey, you know what? And he was in a couple of the Planet of the Apes movies as well. So there's another franchise that you're going to have to transition into now in some capacity.
Fingers crossed. Well, I wouldn't mind playing an ape. Maybe I don't know what they're doing with that, but that'd be cool. I'd love to try on
Yeah,
the green suit and
bit of
you know,
mocap.
yeah, exactly.
Spend a bit of time in Wellington at the Peter Jackson's place. That wouldn't be too bad. So what about that? What about your first meeting with Sir Patrick? I'd imagine that would be a pretty bracing experience.
Pretty nerve-wracking, pretty embarrassing as well. They brought me through to set, and he was filming that interview scene where he's discussing the attack on Mars and what went wrong with the Federation. And they call for a break. The producers go over, they grab him, they bring him over, and the first thing he says is, "Hi, I'm Patrick," in his very, calming voice. Puts his hand out, I shake his hand, and I say, "Good, thanks." Like I don't say, "Hi, my name is Evan." I don't say, "Hi, how are you?" I just say, "Good, thanks," and that's kind of stuck with me for a very, very, very long. Like
Did
I'm
he
still
comment, or did he just power through and?
He played it off. He powered it through. He's a professional. He's a professional at meeting people. He probably gets it all the time at conventions. I imagine there'd be a lot of people who were tongue-tied when meeting Sir Patrick Stewart. So I was probably just like one of many. I'm probably one of many as well that, work across from him and get tongue-tied, or work across from him and just are amazed at, his acting ability, and not just his acting ability, actually, just who he is as a person. You hear about great actors who are fantastic actors but terrible people, but Patrick is everything. He's a caring person, supportive, wants to know your opinion and your thoughts on things as well, especially like on set. And he doesn't need to do that either. He just does it out of the kindness of his heart because he's such a good person.
So a couple of other people that you work with very closely on the show. I was just curious to get a sense of your sort of relationship and dynamic with them. First of all, obviously you did a lot of stuff with Jeri Ryan as well. So really, you got to have quite close ties with two very iconic actors in very, very iconic roles. What were your experiences working with Jeri Ryan? I'd imagine also being a Star Trek fan, having a family as well. That's must have been a very sort of similar experience to meeting and working with Patrick, I'd imagine.
Well, I think it was my brother's, one of his crushes growing up. I remember him saying, like, oh, he loves Jeri Ryan. So that was very interesting. But I'd say the difference between Jeri and Patrick, both of them the utmost professionals, but I spent a little bit more time with Jeri, where it was more, as I was getting to know Patrick, I was getting to know everyone else. But getting to know Jeri, I was just able to it was just her and I in a lot of the scenes. And we had so much fun. There were a few late nights where we couldn't get our words out because we just break character so much. Like there were a few times where it'd be like the last take, and the camera would be facing Jeri or the camera would be facing me, and the person whose back was facing the camera would just be laughing and smiling. So yeah, it was just all laughs.
Sabotaging the other person also.
Yeah, almost. The more we got into filming and the more we all filmed together, the friendlier we all became, the more relaxed we all became around each other. And I think that kind of shows throughout the progression of the series. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, here in Picard season 1, these group of strangers are getting assembled, and they are actually, like, some of them have history, but a lot of them are meeting each other for the first time and are trying to kind of figure out their dynamic within the crew. And that was very much what was happening behind the scenes as well. We were all, getting to know each other and figuring out each other's dynamics and how we all work together. And it's kind of like it's weird when reality mirrors fiction.
And I suppose also when you've got a lead who's playing, an authority figure, a captain, although not necessarily so in Picard as well, leading a cast. And I'm just wondering as well, I mean, as far as where you are in your career at the moment as well, is I think one of the things that's interesting that viewers and listeners may or may not know about Picard is the way that it was shot in blocks of 2 episodes with directors. Yep. So I'd imagine it was a great experience from you to essentially, I mean, making 5 movies, having these blocks. So I'm just wondering what lessons you learned from the diversity of filmmakers, both literally diverse, but also just the fact that different points in their career and backgrounds. And also, I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about working with Jonathan Frakes as a director as well. If you could just speak to those experiences.
So it's pretty much the first thing I'll say about Jonathan Frakes, I couldn't have picked a better director to have done my first episode in Star Trek with, because
of course he directed Absolute Candor, didn't he?
Yeah, and he knows Trek back to front, on screen and off screen. So he knows what works, he knows what doesn't. He's very particular, and even though he's got such like a loud, booming voice, it's never like he never spoke in a way that would make me feel uncomfortable or uncertain. It was always very like supportive and nurturing. So Jonathan, if you're listening to this, thank you again. I always thank him whenever I see him, and I love Jonathan to death. In terms of the block shooting and the differences, every day was a learning experience for me. A lot of things that I did learn on set is things go wrong. They can go wrong, and a lot of the times they will go wrong. But there's normally always a solution to solve it. So a lot of the times it's people, solving problems or working things out or working around things. Each filmmaker that came on set, every single person, as you said, is in a different point of their career and, doing different things. Everyone works a different way. Not every director is the same. So, you'll have someone that's really focused on the action or the camera work, and then other times you'll have someone that's really focused on nurturing and helping the actors and directing the actors. So it was a really good learning experience to just make me realize that no set's the same. Even when we were shooting Trek, the first block of filming is different to the third block just as much as the second block, and like so on and so forth. But yeah, I'd say it was almost like a crash course that money couldn't. The best crash course you could ever get, that money couldn't buy.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I suppose, Star Trek as a franchise has a great history for being a talent academy in many ways, and nurturing people from acting into directing. And Frakes himself obviously is a great example of that, but also everyone from LeVar Burton through Patrick Stewart. And I'm just wondering as well. I mean, as far as this process and the infrastructure, I suppose, that you found yourself in. I just want to sort of relate that a little bit to specifically to the character of Elnor, because I think that I mean Elnor's a lot of his defining qualities are dichotomous, are around the fact that he's a very physically strong and capable character, but he's an extremely emotional character as well. And in many ways, I think he's kind of the heart of the show. I think it's fair to say, and he's also quite sheltered as well. I'm just wondering how you would characterize Elnor and what the process of discovery was for you with the character, collaborating with directors, etc.
Well, I mean, in terms of creating the character, I have to give credit to Michael Shaven and the writing team. They, gave me the bare bones. Well, not even the bare bones. They gave me a very great character to be able to work with, and then they give me the script. I interpret it, and I give my rendition of the character and my interpretation of it, and it's clearly something that people are receptive to because I've got nothing but good feedback so far, which I'm happy with. There's probably like a lot of negative feedback out there, but that comes with any franchise that you enter. There's always going to be people who are divided either on a series or a character or
the fact that it's not exactly the same as the one they grew up on is the big one, exactly. I suppose.
And it is a little different, seeing someone who looks like an elf, a space elf, like in the middle of space fighting with a sword and things like that. But tackling the character, it was kind of hard to portray. I really had to go back and think, how would a kid who's, being taken to their first day of school, what is that like for them? You're meeting new people, you're learning new things, and you don't quite have a grasp of everything, but everything is also exciting and terrifying at the same time. So I kind of had to enter with that kind of mind frame whenever I was, reading the script or rehearsing and trying to, break down my character and run down the scenes. But that being said, he's also very physically capable. He's an assassin who can, kill someone with his bare hands and with his, sword and staff. So it's a fine line, I think. And I think the humor comes out by playing it straight with him, and that's the only way to really bring out his innocence. I feel as though if I had played for comedy, or if I had pushed it a little bit more, it just wouldn't have come off as genuine. It would have come off as almost forced. I did like what you said about Elnor being the heart of the show. I would actually kindly disagree and say that he is almost the person that points out the obvious that isn't noticed. And he's able to speak his mind at points where other people aren't. So he is almost like the voice of not reason, but I don't know how to make this sound articulate, but he just pretty much points out the things that people are either not willing to see or just are so preoccupied that they miss it.
And that's an important function, I think, in any Star Trek show. I mean, you've always had characters, for example, like whether it be Spock in the original series or perhaps Worf or Data in The Next Generation, who kind of just don't have the capacity to bullshit, basically, and are very kind of there for those moments of levity. And I think another thing about Elnor as well that's interesting is that it's how the other characters respond around him that kind of defines him, and in some ways defines the show. Like, I mean, I noticed the episode where there's an episode that opens with Santiago Cabrera's character talking about how, you've just been left on the Borg ship, and there's always concern, and that is a moment where the group really congeals in their sort of concern for you as well. And I'm just wondering what you feel are the defining moments for Elnor. Are there any moments in this series that you can point to, either just that you enjoyed watching as, I suppose, having that distance after the show had been edited and watching it as an audience member, but also being the person who has obviously contributed to bringing Elnor to life? Any moments that you feel were really sort of central or enjoyable for the character?
For the character, I'd say there's a few unenjoyable moments, which is probably moments that are enjoyable for the viewer. So
really?
Unenjoyable moment, an unenjoyable moment for Elnor, I'd say, would have to be when he beheaded his beheading scene. So, I mean, that's really the first time he's actually killed someone. in like, well, obviously in Trek, it's the first person he's killed. It's someone that he's grown up knowing, you know, his entire life, and he gave that person the option. So I think there is his first kind of understanding of what death actually is. I'd say another moment that would stand out for Elnor is obviously any time on the Borg cube, especially when Jonathan Del Arco, or Hugh, especially when Hugh dies, and then, you know, teaming up with Seven of Nine and taking back the cube. I'd have to say that was kind of like his moment, because he's essentially completed, you know, one of his impossible missions. He's helped free the Borgs of you know, Romulan control. So I'd have to say that kind of stands out for Elnor. And a scene that really stood out for me is when we're on Coppelius, and the crew come to the cube and they're not sure what they're going to find there. That really stood out to me. That kind of like reuniting moment. That was a fun scene to film. They cut it out, but I actually sprint over, hug everyone, and I pick up Alison Pill and like spin her around. So and I don't think she was expecting that either. But that was like a real fun kind of moment.
Oh, it's such a shame that wasn't left in.
Yeah, I mean, the things make, you know, not every. If we could put everything in, you know, we would, but that's just not the way it works.
Season 2, and I think it's interesting as well. But I think that Elnor brings out a lot of the protective impulses of the audience as well. Like when I was watching this, my wife's a Star Trek fan as well. Not as much as I. She humours me, but she does enjoy. She really enjoys Picard. But when there's a sort of empathy, I think, that Elnor brings out, because the moment when you get left on the Borg cube, my wife, and the episode ends with it, just literally stood up and went, "He better be okay." And it was just to see that kind of level of concern over a new character, I thought was really interesting. But and tell me a little bit about the sort of. I understand that you have you know, an interest in fashion. And obviously, you know, fashion and costuming in their own way are a big element for Elnor. What was that like? Can you tell me a little bit about your sort of, was that interesting and enjoyable for you, or was it a difficult thing to do? And
it was, so I before I started acting or really started pursuing acting, I was scouted for modeling. So for the past, I don't know, like 3 years before Star Trek, that was kind of my work, my life. So into fashion, heading towards costume and just seeing the concepts of everything before I actually headed in was so exciting. And then you go in and they literally measure you head to toe, you know, hand width, arm width, everything, you know, circumference, and they build this like amazing outfit from just an idea. That's the whole part. That's the thing about everything creative that kind of amazes me. You know, it just starts with an idea, a small little seed, and it's kind of up to the person to, you know, nurture it and help it grow into whatever it is. And yeah, credit to Christine, head of costume and design. She made me the most badass outfit I think I've ever worn. It was warm, you know, during all the action scenes, but you know, I wouldn't have chosen a different outfit because I don't know. I feel like it just worked with Elnor.
I suppose one of the other defining elements of Elnor is that you've got a catchphrase. That's a rare thing for start, you know, for a new character. And was that? I mean, presumably that was there from the beginning. Was that just something that you saw in the script and thought, "Oh, that's badass! That I'm gonna get this," and you get to say it several times, so it gets solidified in the minds of the viewers as well.
And in and I get to say it in Romulan as well, which made me really happy. But when I first got that was in the first script I ever got for Elnor. So that's been in there, I think, since the beginning. But as soon as I read it, I was like, "Please, my friend, choose to live." I'm like, is this going to be a catchphrase? That was my first thing. And then the more I said it, you know, like we're talking, Arnie has "Hasta la vista, baby," or "I'll be back." Elnor or me, I've got "Please, my friend, choose to live," and I love it. The convention that I do, or whenever I'm on Cameo, that's pretty much my go-to thing, you know, "Please, my friend, choose to have a happy birthday." So I think it's stuck.
And
I'm
also,
kind of
what a
happy.
great catchphrase, because you get to be polite and badass all at the same time. So it really kind
Yeah,
of ticks all the boxes. And also, how many people get to say that they have had their catchphrase written by a Pulitzer Prize winning author? I mean,
I
that's a good spot.
not many. If there are, if I hope I am just the one though,
Yeah,
because
I think that's a club of one, isn't it? What was the
yeah.
response of your friends with all of this? I mean, this is a life changing thing for you, but how have your friends responded to this? Do they act differently around you? Were they impressed, or were they just like, yeah, nah, whatever, you know?
Um, yes and no. Like, the interesting thing was I found out a lot more of my friends like Star Trek than I thought. So
People were coming out the closet on that, were they? Or
yeah, so that was the interesting thing because I feel like still I'm openly a Star Trek fan, but a lot of my friends were like, like I grew up watching Star Trek or Deep Space Nine. My parents always had it on the Sci-Fi channel and things like that. But for the most part, all of them are fairly normal. I mean, they'll try and talk to me about my episodes or things like that, and I don't really, that's normally when I get uncomfortable with that
hmm.
actually. If I'm being honest, I normally say, like, let's talk about like the footy, or let's talk about Star Trek Discovery, or the new movie that everyone, like the new script, like the supposed Star Trek script that Quentin Tarantino's
Mm.
written. Like, what do you reckon that would be like?
Yeah,
Like
like
a
I'll speculate with you, but I'm not going to. It's. I mean, I suppose it's all. Many jobs have confidentiality clauses. It's not. This isn't exclusively a showbiz thing, I guess.
I don't think it is, but to their credit, they do treat me just like nothing's changed, which is nice.
How much?
It's
Just
wait, sorry,
in
go.
this sort of confidentiality space, how much information did you have about the show when you were filming it? Did you just have your sides, or did you have? How much did you know?
Um, just trying to think about how much I'm allowed to say. So I knew everything. I knew a lot about my character in terms of background, everything like that. Um, Storyline, they give us a rough kind of understanding of what's going on and where it's leading. But a lot of the times, with like when Jeri Ryan appeared in at the end of my episode, I wasn't told about that. I was told before I was given the script. This is going to be your introduction episode. It's going to be given. There's going to be a bit of background about your character revealed and your history with Picard, and then there's going to be somewhat of a surprise at the end. And I remember thinking, what is the surprise? And I remember reading someone. I remember literally the week before, someone DM'd me, like ran a Trek fan, and asked if I'm going to be Picard's long lost Romulan son. And I just remember thinking, like, where have they connected the two? Like, how have they found that connection? And I think it's literally just because I'm Australian and he's English, and people are like, oh, England colonized Australia. There must be, that must be the connection. But as soon as I read Seven of Nine, I was just like blown away. So a lot of the surprises and kind of reveals were only revealed once we were given the script for the show.
Sure. Was there any conversation about your accent? Was there any ever talk of you playing it British or playing it American? Or
So I auditioned for the role with an American accent, and we got all the way up to rehearsals with the accent. But credit to Jonathan Frakes, he approached the producers and everything. He said, with an English Romulan, we've got a Romulan with a Nigerian accent. We've got Romulans with all different accents. This is a person who has been displaced from his home.
mm.
Why don't we, you know, create a bit more inclusivity and diversity, and why don't we let him use his natural accent? So they spoke to me about it. They said, is that something you'd be comfortable with doing? Not because apparently not every actor is comfortable with speaking in
Mm.
their regular accent. I know Tom Holland, as an example, is someone who
Mm.
doesn't really like acting with using his British accent. He prefers using American, but I was all for it, and I think it was a really good choice. I think it kind of gives a broader understanding of not just Romulans, but kind of like any species. You know, they're going to have any accent. It's not just going to be standard British or American. You know, there's going to be diversity, and people are going to sound different. I mean, people sound different, and we're all on the same planet.
Sure.
So how different are people who are raised in, you know, Alpha Centauri, for example, going to sound compared to us? Like, it's going to be different. So
and it is funny what sometimes people question in science fiction as well. And we have come a long way, fortunately, not all the way there. I mean, I remember in the mid-90s when Tim Russ was revealed as playing a Vulcan character in Star Trek Voyager. And people's responses initially, fortunately, a very small number of people, was there aren't African-American Vulcans. And it's like, you'll accept Vulcans, but you'll only accept that there are only Caucasian.
Yeah.
And I mean, now that seems kind of ridiculous, you know, or comic almost. But I think now, and obviously, you know, we've had an Irish Romulan as well in the series as well. So I think it's good that that's just not something that's even being questioned anymore.
Yeah, or even really like spoken about or addressed. You know, why does he sound different? Why does it? I think when you're the first of something in a show, there's always going to be kind of, well, like we said, there's always going to be division. People are always going to speak up about it because it's not aligning with their ideas. But the great thing about Star Trek is it's always been diverse and inclusive and different. And they have always pushed, you know, boundaries and done things that are different. Like people it's Deep Space Nine. You can't, people always were saying like, you can't have Star Trek if it's centered in one spot. I mean, you can. It's very obvious you can, because look at Deep Space Nine and look at the success of it and how much of a great show, how many people love that show.
And I think with Picard, it's the same. I think that, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm really looking forward to season 2, is that for a lot of kind of the old school fans, it always takes a season to sort of settle in and then sort of return to, I mean, obviously season 1 ends with you guys very much a crew. So it's almost as though season 1 is the prologue, and that's obviously Discovery did a very similar thing. So I mean, on that subject, season 2, that's the elephant in the room. When's the film going to start rolling?
Soon, very, 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 very soon. I don't know if I'm allowed to say exactly when. Not before Christmas. I think I'm allowed to say that.
I think we all know it's starting in January.
Yeah, sweet. Okay, yeah, January. I have been watching. I am on a lot of the Facebook groups like Star Trek shit posting and.
Oh yeah. I love the more irreverent the better. I think with the Star Trek groups is my.
Yeah. So yeah, January we will be filming. I don't even know if I can. I don't know if they posted the date. All I know is everyone's just saying January. Yeah. So we'll start season 2 there, and in my opinion, it cannot quicker. I'm so excited, not just to get back to work, but to get back to, you know, the Motley Crew and hang out with everyone, and, you know, just in the not even sure I'm allowed to say where we're filming, but at some random studio in California.
And I think that because you've all had this, as we all have had this incredible experience over the last year, I think that will be sort of really adds for determination. And I suppose one other thing as well, when you will, I'm sure you already understand on an intellectual level, but I think will really hit home when you do start getting out to those conventions, is that Star Trek has always had a little bit more to it, I think, from a fan perspective, because of a lot of the sort of the mythology of Gene Roddenberry and the message of that. I'm just wondering, what does Star Trek mean to you as a philosophy?
It's very interesting. I remember being asked this earlier in the year. What does Star Trek mean to me? Before I'd say it was just entertainment. Growing up, it was something I could watch, and then actually going back to it as well, just kind of like made me realize more and more how much of a mirror it is to our society, and how much it does reflect. And the great thing about sci-fi, and the great thing about Gene and how he portrayed all these messages, I have to say they were like easily digestible, if that makes sense. It didn't feel in your face. It didn't feel forced. And I feel like the writers now are continuing that legacy. They're bringing up real world issues, today issues, problems that we're going to be facing in the future, and problems that we're facing today. And they're bringing light to it and helping, you know, create a dialogue, you know, amongst people. And credit to, you know, Trekkies and Trekkers everywhere. They were the first people to kind of like pick up on that.
And what are your hopes for season 2 for Elnor and from the show? Have you got anything that you'd like to see in season 2 or beyond, or any actors that you'd like to perhaps get to spend a little bit more time with on screen?
I'd like to see Sir Ian in the show. I'd like to see.
It's got to
Jeri
happen. It's got to happen at some point, hasn't it?
Whether it's a villain or another like a commander or something, you know, he needs to be in it. I'd like to see Geordie. I'd love a sparring session with Worf. Something, you know, just a
you guys just sort of, you're the same but different, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, it was Klingons that were viewed as, you know, enemies, and then, you know, we get given Worf, and that's a different perspective on Klingons. You know, not everyone's the same, and I think it's the same with Elnor. You know, it's a different view on Romulans that we haven't seen before, a different portrayal, and he's so different to, you know, what most Romulans are. Most Romulans are very secretive and, you know, not trusting and scheming, or that's how they're viewed anyway. And then you've got this kid, this Romulan, what do they call it? What were they calling him? The she boy or the boy sister boy. And he's completely different. He speaks his mind. He, you know, believes in protecting and helping people, and, you know, doing his utmost to protect everyone.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to season 2, and I think that Elnor will be a really key figure, because I think that all Star Trek shows have that character who looks at humanity with a sort of objective lens in a way that the other characters can't. So I think that there'll always be a lot for Elnor to do. So all that remains to be said is thank you so much for your time, Evan. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure too. Thank you.
And can't wait to start seeing the insane rumors for season 2 coming up. The first time you guys have an opportunity to throw us any scraps, we'll be all poring over those and trying to figure out who your father or son is and all that good stuff.
Son, oh no, what's been going on between season 1 and 2?
Well, you know, we've all been locked down, haven't we? You've got to keep yourself amused somehow. These things happen.
There are a lot of lockdown babies, lockdown pregnancies, I reckon, that are going to be appearing very soon.
Well, yeah, that's it. There's going to be a whole sort of generation of people who are going to look back on when they were born and do the maths and go, hang on, I think I can see what's going on here. But no, thank you so much for your time. And I'm just wondering, is there anything that have you got any online presence or anything that you'd like to sort of push people towards, or how they can find out about you or learn more about you and your work?
I'm really just on Instagram. I do want to say to everyone though, please download the free Rice app. So what this game is essentially it's a quiz game. And there are ad banners underneath. This is it's a game that's run by the Worldwide Food Program, and it's also run by the UN as well. So under the UN, for every question you answer, 5 grains of rice will get the equivalent of money. It adds up to being 5 grains of rice, and you know you can answer like 200 questions in a day. And the more people that do it, the more money gets donated. The more that we can help end, you know, like famine in Yemen and you know, famine around the world.
That's brilliant. And I'll add a link to that in the show notes. If you guys just look on the YouTube page or just look down at your phone, and there'll be a link that you can click on and do that. So again, thanks so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good one. Live long and prosper.